Hello and welcome back to another video. In this video I'm going to show you how to paint a simple landscape painting, and I will be talking to you about the elements of a landscape painting. Let's get to it.
So first I'm going to spray some water on my surface, whether you're using a canvas or a canvas board. Usually having some water helps to make the paint move easier. This is the reference photo that I'm going to use for showing this demo, and I'm going to be using several different photos to build this landscape painting. So for the elements of a landscape painting, what I mean by that is things such as the sky, the water, mountains, and trees, how you can paint all of these in one painting. I have started to paint my sky first. I have mixed a tiny bit of ultramarine blue with white, and I'm using my very wide brush, which is 2 inches wide. You can cover larger areas with a large paintbrush. So for a sky that is like in that photo that I showed you in my reference photo, there are some clouds and the sky is not that blue, but I can just change it and make it different and make it however I want. So I'm just going to add a tiny bit of black as well to make it slightly gray, to show that kind of cloudy sky. And I'm going to add water as I am painting because it's very dry and I cannot move my brush easily. Now I'm going to use slightly smaller brush to create my clouds. Remember, there are different kinds of clouds, and when you're looking at your reference photo, spend some time to identify the forms of any element that you're trying to draw. For example, if you're drawing the clouds, make sure to know or identify what is the form of the cloud. Is it like a popcorn shape or is it like feathers? And try to imitate that form with your brush. Now I'm going to draw my horizon line. As you see on this photo, I have made a grid on it, but I would like you to not use, because most people find it easier to have a grid on their reference photos, so it would become much easier to identify each area and make it as close as possible to the reference photo and copying it. We're not trying to copy this photo, we're just using it as a reference. So I suggest you to try to train your eyes by looking at a photo or looking at let's say if you are actually in the nature and you're trying to paint something right on the spot, being able to observe and paint instead of trying to make this grid. It will make it too flat, and once you're in a real life situation and you're trying to do a painting, you might not be able to do so. So it's a good idea to try to training your eyes and enhancing your observational skills for that matter. And so how do I know where my horizon line falls? If you look at my reference photo, the red line is where the middle of my photo is. So if I would divide my photo into 2 equal parts, that would be the half of it. So that's the middle of my photo. But my horizon line is slightly higher than that. So that yellow line is actually where my horizon line falls. So based on that, I'm going to create my horizon line, and just looking at the proportions and realizing how much space are around each of these elements. So now for drawing my mountains, I just look at the form and I follow the form. I'm using my flat brush and I use flat side of it to use it for making these nice lines. And of course, if we are painting the water, everything that is happening on the top of my horizon line is also has a reflection on the water. So if there are mountains, there's a reflection of the mountains and the sky and the clouds right on the water as well. So pretty much you just repeat the same color that you have mixed for your mountain for the water as well. And this is how you can start painting the water at this stage of your painting. And so for painting the mountains, now I am using my palette knife. There are different kinds of palette knives. You can try and see which ones you enjoy the most. I didn't have any specific preference. I just wanted to show how you can paint clouds if you have a palette knife and you want to try it. So this is how you can do. And same thing again, there's a reflection of everything on the top, on the bottom as well, right on the water. So I just repeat those same colors on the water. So this is how you can actually create the form. And I am slightly exaggerating the colors in this painting since it's a demo and I am just trying to show the different elements of a landscape painting. I'm just gonna try and add a tiny bit of yellow into my sky and my clouds to make it more interesting looking. This yellow is not found on my reference photo, but I would like to just add it. And this is how you can add a bit of snow on your mountains. Again, I'm going to use my reference photo for understanding where I could put some snow, and I just follow from that. And then again, looking back at my reference photo and trying to read all the colors, I noticed that there's some warmer tones on the bottom of these mountains, so I'm just going to add. And now for painting the trees that are far away on these mountains, I again use my flat brush, which is 1 inch, and by just tapping the flat side of it slightly, I can just create the form of the trees, the pine trees far away on these mountains. And if you would look at these color charts that I have here, there's always at least three different tones and shades of each color when we are trying to paint anything. There's the darker ones like that darker green, and then the lightest one which would be close to white, and there's a mid-tone, something in between these two. So whatever that you're going to paint, make sure that you include at least these three tones. So starting from the darkest to the lightest and a mid-tone color. So remember, for painting a clear water, since it's clear, you will be seeing everything that is underneath it or behind it. So when you are painting a clear water, you're pretty much painting everything that is again reflected on it or is underneath it. Here for this water that I am painting, the details of the water and you have to look at the movement of the water and adding light and white lines to show the movement of the water. Depending whether it is windy or not, these lines are also going to change. So you can show the movement of the water by using the side of your flat brush and adding white color, just straight out of tube, using white, and then start blending those other colors around it to create the effect of water. Now let's see if I want to add a tree in front of my mountains here in a foreground. I am looking at this reference photo, which has a completely different horizon line. So technically this tree that I'm going to be painting is going to be very up close, and based on this horizon line, probably this tree that is so up close, I should be able to see only some of its branches and leaves. So I'm going to paint this pine tree by using again my very darker tones of the green and some lighter and the mid-tones. And I take my time, play around. I'm still using the flat brush because it allows me to create the form of the pine tree leaves much easier than, let's say, if I were using a round brush. There's also a video on different brushes for acrylic painting that you can watch that video as well if you need more information on what brushes should you be using for painting different elements and different things. So as you see, I am just playing around with my different tones of the color green for this pine tree, and I have added some branches. I do the same thing for the branches. Again, I'm using lighter tones, darker tones, and a mid-tone to create volume and make this tree look more realistic. Now, this painting is not even near to being completed. I don't add too many details to it. I'm just trying to show the elements in a very quick format for you, so you can have an idea how you can paint a simple landscape painting. There are many different elements and details that you can add to it. So for example, I just added some tiny bit of green grass on the bottom too. And let's say if you want to paint different kinds of trees, let's say there's a birch tree as well, I'm just going to do another one right on the other side here, and I'm just doing this mentally from my mind and trying to create this beautiful landscape by using various reference photos. And if you don't know how to paint birch tree or whatever that you are having in mind for your landscape painting, you can always search for different photos and just look at it and try to replicate that on your work. And so this is how the branches look like. Again, I am going back on this reference of the different tones. For example, for birch trees, they have very interesting leaves. The back of their leaves is very light, it's almost white, and the front of it is much darker. So when the wind is blowing through them, they go dark and light. It's interesting. So I'm going to add some of those very lighter tones on top of it, and I'm using very small brush. It's a flat brush. It helps me to create the form of the leaves. As you see, I'm just tapping it and making these textures and patterns by just using my brush to tap these little forms. And let's say there's some tiny stones and pebbles by the river or by this lake here by the water. I'm just going to add those as well. I do the same thing again. I use 3 different tones from light to dark and mid-tone. I am just trying to paint whatever that is underneath it. For example, here are the stones and the pebbles, and so that's what is covering, or water is covering, I guess. And don't forget to sign your paintings. Always when you finish them, sign it somewhere on your painting. I finished signing this painting. Also, if you want to learn how to take a photo of your artwork with your phone so you can quickly share it with others, and particularly if it's for sharing it with your teacher, and you can watch that video and learn how to do that. Now again, could I go further and make this painting even with more details? Yes, of course I could. But for the purpose of this video and just showing the different elements of the landscape painting, I'm just going to end my painting here, and I think it shows all the different elements and how you can paint a simple landscape painting.
Here, this is how it turned out. If you try it, let me know, and I would like to see how your landscape painting turns out. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.